Hello, 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 and good day to all of you. I hope you're doing well. Here. It's a beautiful spring day, or at least, yeah, it is spring, isn't it? It's a beautiful spring day, regardless of what time of the year it is. Anyway, um, one of the things I was thinking about this week is recently I've had a lot of students tell me that they do their best work waiting till the end, procrastinating. In other words, it's like I do my best work at waiting just before everything gets done. Throughout my educational career and even before I became a teacher, I've always wondered about that. I had a brother who did things like that, and I always wondered about him. I just thought he was blowing things off and doing it at the last minute. Recently, however, somebody was telling me something that suddenly made this whole tendency fall into place because at least it makes sense to me. This may not be actually what's going on, but this is what makes sense to me. And I think now that we all do this, actually, except we don't necessarily realize that that's what we're doing. You've all probably been in a situation in which you've got a lot of time to do something. In fact, there's a statement that goes something to the effect if you've got, a task expands according to the amount of time you've got to do it. So that if you've got 3 hours to do it, you'll take 3 hours to do it. But the odds are, how much of that 3 hours is actually going to be spent doing the task? So, for example, if you're a student and you're in school and you've got 3 hours on a Saturday to catch up on your work, odds are, at best, you'll actually do about an hour and a half of work, if that much. The other hour and a half, or two, as the case may be, you're going to be flipping onto your cell phone, checking your email, calling a friend, gazing off and out the window or some such thing like that, so that you're not really focusing on that specific task. What suddenly dawned on me recently is that when people wait until the last minute, what they're doing is they suddenly increase their focus on that particular item, whatever it is they need to do. And they become zeroed in on that task. And they do well because what they're doing is focusing on that specific task. So I think we've all done this before. If you've got something that, you're ready to do something, you've got like 15 minutes, you focus on it and you get something done. You're just not thinking in terms that you're waiting and you're procrastinating and doing anything about it. I think you just realize that, well, as I said before with that quote, if a task takes the amount of time that you have to do it. So if you've only got 30 minutes, it takes you 30 minutes. So let's try this then. There's something called the Pomodoro technique. Why it's I don't know why this, but that's the Italian word for tomato. They've even got timers that are shaped like tomatoes for this particular purpose. But the idea in this particular technique is to get a timer or to set a clock or some such thing like that for a specific amount of time and do a task and focus on that. So what you could do, for example, is find a task that you need to do. You need to do some bookkeeping. You need to study a book. You need to do some paperwork. You need to clean out a closet or some such thing like that. Whatever the task is, just set yourself, say like 30 minutes, 25 minutes, depending on what the task is. Set the timer and just focus diligently on that task and nothing else. Don't look at your cell phone. Don't look out the window. Don't turn on the TV. Don't do anything else. Just do that task. Then when the timer goes off, you're done. If maybe, let's say if you were cleaning out your closet and you didn't get it all done, if you want to continue and have the time, go ahead. But at that moment, when the timer goes off, you basically stop and you're done with whatever it is you were going to do. So the idea here is that to get something done that you need to be doing is to give yourself the real focused attention of that specific task. So you could set up, let's go back to the example I gave earlier about having, say, 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon to focus or to study or catch up any particular work. The recommended idea would be to get the timer, set down, could be your cell phone in this particular case, but don't use the cell phone for anything else other than the timer on this, for 25 minutes, let it go and focus on that. Then you do 5 minutes or 10 minutes for a break, then set again for another 25 minutes or so, then another break, and then another 25 until you get that 3 hours. You will probably accomplish more than if you just tried to do it without those particular breaks. Now, the key to this is you've got to do it in relatively short segments of time. Don't go over 30 minutes unless you go to like 35 or something. And then you have to have a break between the sections. You cannot just go and set the timer for, say, 60 minutes and just go for 60 minutes. It's not going to work that way. You've got to do relatively short segments of time. The other key is you have to do somewhat of a sense of timing this for whatever it is you're trying to do. For example, if you're trying to do something with, say, math, balance the checkbook or some such thing like that, you might need, say, more 25 minutes or maybe just 15 minutes, depending on what it is you're trying to do. Because if you cut it off too soon and take that break, then you're going to have to kind of like recreate the wheel, so to speak, when you come back. So this may not necessarily be a good technique to use for a lot of math kinds of things, but that depends on what you're doing with the numbers. Does this make sense? So you could try it and see what happens, but if I'm right on this, and it makes sense to me the more I think about it, is what's happening with the people who swear that they get things done just before the papers due or the assignments due or whatever that they need to get done, is because they're cutting everything out and they're just zeroing in and they've got that blinders on and they're just focusing on that particular task, and that's what makes it successful. And you can do that too. You can do it like 3 weeks ahead of time, because if you're saying, oh, gee, no, I need 3 hours or I need 3 weeks, you probably don't do it. Think about how much time you don't use, even if you've got that 3 weeks time, because you're still going to have time that you're flipping on the cell phone or you're looking out the window or something like that, because your focus isn't there. I'd still bet, even if you give yourself 3 weeks or something to do something, that you have brief periods of time in which you're focused intently on whatever that task is. So my challenge to you this week is to try doing this deliberately. If you got something that's set up, a month from now or next week or whatever, can you sit down and find yourself small bits of time, focus on that, get that done, and then that's it until your next focus time. You might actually even schedule focused time, that you've got specific times. For those of you who say have children, maybe the baby, when baby's napping, you focus on time while the baby's napping. So it's like, well, baby, I don't know, at least 15 minutes, at least if the child naps for 15 minutes, sit down, get your things set up, sit down and focus, and you got that task done because you're focused for that particular time frame. Does this make sense? Try it and let me know what you think about it. And if you've got people who do swear or don't swear, depending on how you want to look at it, that's what's going on with them, share it with them and see what they have to think. Just watch the other people and see where you're coming from with this. I'd be willing to bet that you find that something like this is going to work. Now, again, it has to match the task. There are things, for example, I can't do this when I grade papers, because if I'm grading an assignment and the timer goes off, I'm not going to stop right in the middle of the assignment and say, okay, I got to take a break, because then I've got to that's kind of like doing the math. I've got to reset my mind and say, okay, what was I doing and where was I going? So I've got to sort of like match this up with whatever task I'm doing. I'm more likely to use this particular technique. For example, if I'm going to I'll do 1 paper or 2 papers, and then I'll take a break, that kind of thing. So you can still use this, if not necessarily with a clock. You might want to use it with, say, like a specific, start that one again. You might want to try it with a specific task. Okay. So again, try it. Let me know what happens. Give me some feedback on this. I'd like to see whether you think I'm correct in this theory or not. And I'd like you to, share it with people and see what they think. I've also got a couple of blog posts that are connected with focusing. So, I'll send those to you in the email as well and see what you think. So until next week, when I figure out what I'm going to say, because I don't really know from week to week, we'll see you, and I hope you have a good week. So Valerie out.